I just did the whole entrepreneur's journey that so many entrepreneurs talk about, of like killing myself, which was so ironic because we were the authority in the space on conscious business. So much of our content was about how to create like a conscious, loving, delightful workplace, and to be a conscious leader, and to like emulate these things for your business. And like I was just a profound hypocrite on the back end.
So it seems like, just going back to the early years, you've been kind of in that active space of, environmental and what's going on from early. So was that like from a young age? Like how old were you when you knew this is the area that you wanted to go towards? Just
Yeah,
curious.
I would say it's like 25.
Yeah.
It wasn't like super early. I knew my mom is a pediatric occupational therapist. She works with children who have significant learning disabilities and special needs. And she used to take me and my brother, and we would sit in the corner of her office and like do our homework, and we would watch her work with these children. And my mom would come home exhausted, yes, but also just fulfilled. She had meaning. Like every day she was going and doing something to make the world a better place by helping these children out. And she still does it to this day. She's been doing it for over 40 years. She's a saint. And so I knew going through college and all the things that that was the way that you have a meaningful, purposeful life, is to find something that you really care about and do it. And so I knew that that was something I wanted to do. I was very self-absorbed and ridiculous in college. And so I was just like working at a margarita bar and getting an English degree and like, well, I don't know. And then flailed around for a while, moved to Costa Rica. And then I came back and did it. So I would say, yeah, mid-20s is when I really put my stake in the ground that was what I wanted to do.
Well, that's cool. And then from that, well, we all have, and that's beautiful. You took that time for yourself to, find yourself. I know, me being a father myself, a big thing I encourage my kids to do is try lots of things, just try lots of things and then find their way. It's interesting that you brought up the children that your mother worked with, because one thing, thinking back now, it triggered something for me. Is one thing that made my wife and I way more conscious was that as I was having success with my ad agency, we had bought a property in the country, and my wife had grown up in the country and I had not. I grew up in a city. Like I said, my dad worked for a big tech company in Silicon Valley. And so I was like, oh, I'll try this ranching stuff out. So we got a couple acres. It wasn't much, but it was a couple acres. It was a big deal for me, but it was around all this farming. And right when we moved in there, we had our son. And then right after that, we had complications. So after our son was born, we lost 4 babies, and 2 of them were anencephaly. And for those that aren't familiar with that, it's a form of spina bifida, but much worse. The skull doesn't form, and like when you look at the ultrasound from even at like week 10 or 12, you can start to see it looks like an alien. Like the head is all big because it doesn't have anything to contain it, and those babies typically die in the womb. And even our studies that we looked at that time, the longest was like 11 hours the baby lived if you went full term, and mothers died that were like so adamant with going full term. So it is a pregnancy that you terminate because of all the risks. And then because we had 2 of those, which they're already abnormal, and then to have 2, Texas A&M and Duke University were looking for people to do studies on. And during that time when we participated in that, almost all of them were in rural areas around pesticide, like 90 percentile. And then also they're finding spina bifida at that same, and there's a third one, I forget the name of it. There's 3 in that category. And then as soon as we moved out of that house, like within a year, we had 2 baby girls. Well, not the same year, but we had, so it like all of that happening. It was like, and I got overweight too. Like all my life, I was pretty active, and I was up over 260 pounds, and I didn't feel like, and mind you, my diet wasn't as good as it is now, but still, as soon as we started eating organic, I started losing weight. And even in our neighborhood, the way the study goes is somebody down the street could have all the babies they want, no problem. But what happens is it's the pesticide plus the mother's chromosomes and the father's chromosomes, and that mixture is what causes this to happen. But I could tell you, as soon as we moved away from that farming environment, and they were like buzzing, and I didn't even know, I didn't think, this is one of my early houses. It was the second house I ever bought. And it was, they were like buzzing over our house, and I didn't know it. You know, you go look at the house, no one was buzzing over. So we're in the house like a month, and I'm like there. It was like weekend, I had the window open because I live in California, right? And so we're just like, I'm just like waking up on a weekend day, resting, and all of a sudden it's like, and like coming down. I could see the plane in my window. I'm like, what the heck? I fall out of bed. I like roll out of bed. I'm like, what the heck just happened? They're just spraying everything. And I think that like I was already conscious of people, as I said earlier. Like I always was good to people, but that was the point when I became more environmental. I was like, this is BS. It's not okay. It like, I saw 100% firsthand the effects on my family's life. And we were told we weren't going to be able to have kids. They were basically like, stop trying, you're polluted. But then as soon as we moved away from the pollution, we were fine. Both the girls, no complications, none, natural birth, everything's fine. Today, to this day, everything's fine. And it was moving away from the pollution.
Steve, thanks so much for sharing that. I can't imagine what that time period in your life felt like for you guys. So that, yeah, it's a lot to share.
I know, and I wasn't planning on it here. I took up time on when I want to ask you more questions, but it just
You're kidding. That's like such a good, like an important story. It needs to be told.
Well, I appreciate that, and it just came out of me, and like that's how I kind of follow my gut too. But you brought that up, and for whatever it is, I mean, you're right. It is telling these stories. And the more that I tell these stories, do you know how many parents come up to me and they're like, we lost the baby and we lost the baby. I didn't think it could have been the food. And then, you know, just by that, people start thinking about maybe I shouldn't eat non-organic things. And it, you know, it does make a huge difference. Yeah. And this, I think, why we do the work that we do and all the things you did with your publication to get people to think consciously, because, you know, these are things that people do to turn a profit. And, you know, ultimately it's so crazy and ridiculous to me because it's always short term, right? Like even you brought up the quarterly, you know, return analysis and what they're posting and profiting every quarter. It's all like that 90 days. And the same thing happens when people are using pesticides. Like, what can we do really quickly? But really now we're looking at their farms are dying, right? Like how many years can you pollute the dirt? And, you know, so luckily we're seeing this movement and change. And thank you, you know, over 10 years ago, being an advocate and deciding to make a publication, which I kind of want to switch gears to, like, all that goes on with that, because part of this show is about how we live and work. So there you are becoming an entrepreneur, and you're, you know, all of a sudden, how did you see, and were you able to keep balance, or did you go into like freak mode as most of us do as entrepreneurs and then like lose sight of your own life? Like maybe tell a little bit about how that went. And now, because I want to transition to like how you're living now as a mother, and, you know, so maybe share a little bit of like what happened as you became an entrepreneur in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I did it exactly how you would imagine that I did it. I had this idea for a print publication, and with the co-founder, and we started a magazine. I was 29, and I cold emailed John Mackey from Whole Foods, like found his email on the internet and cold emailed him and was like, I'm launching a print magazine and would love for you to be on the cover of it and blah, 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 blah. And like 2 months later, he writes me back and he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And the beauty of that is that when you go to the Whole Foods buyer with a publication that has the founder on the cover, very few Whole Foods buyers are going to say no, because if John Mackey has agreed to put his face on the cover, then it's likely, this is a little strategery on my part, that we could throw him on the cover and maybe we'd get into Whole Foods. We got into every Whole Foods in the world with our first print magazine. And it was one of those things where we had this crazy dream to put this magazine out, and then it was like a business, and like, holy crap, like the train left the station and I am on board the train and I don't know what I'm doing. And I just did the whole entrepreneur's journey that so many entrepreneurs talk about, of like killing myself, which was so ironic because we were the authority in the space on conscious business. So much of our content was about how to create like a conscious, loving, delightful workplace, and to be a conscious leader, and to like emulate these things for your business. And like, I was just a profound hypocrite on the back end. I was killing myself. Like the conscious leadership principles, we weren't living them. We didn't understand, like we didn't have a clear articulation of what our purpose was as an organization. My co-founder and I, you know, it's such a hard thing to get in the pressure cooker of startup land with anybody. And my co-founder and I weren't seeing eye to eye on things, and blah, 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 blah. And it like spiraled into like 3 years in, like to the point where I was having like panic attacks. I remember one night going to bed and I was having chest pains as 32 years old. And I was like, I think am I having a heart attack? Should I talk to my husband? Should I wake him up? Like, I think I'm like, I mean, like that level of stress and anxiety. We did a big investment round and brought in 21 angel investors, and like the stress and pressure of responsibly stewarding their money. And then like we weren't doing well because we were a media company and nobody buys print magazines, shocking. And so like just the whole thing, I am so grateful that I did it. And I desperately wish that I had done it differently. Because I ran myself into the ground. And then we got acquired, and I was able to kind of hit a bit of a reset button, and then I stayed on for 2 years, and then I left, and blah, 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 blah. So that was the truncated version, as much as I could pack into.
I appreciate that. And, you know, and I was about the same age at 31. I remember coming home really late at night from the office, and I sat on the couch and I told my wife that she better call or take me to the hospital, because I felt like my heart was coming out of my chest. And then she was able to calm me down, and it was a panic attack. But I can sit with where you were. Hey there, I want to give you something really big. It's called Clear Path to Customers. It's the way that we get the right language to get the right client. I like to call them your wow clients, so that you can have more results, more revenue, more raving fans, and more referrals. And I want to give this to you absolutely free. And all you have to do is go to stevenapolitan.com to check it out, or you can look at the description here. We'll put the details there. As always, remember, choose gratitude and create freedom.